I thank the gentleman and for that recitation of God's prayer. Now you're going to hear from someone who actually served with Bill Gray, who was his colleague in more ways than one, because Bill Gray was also a member of the greatest college fraternity. He was an alpha, and I recognize now the gentleman from New York, Congressman Rangel, for 3 minutes.
Without objection.
Let me first thank my colleague, Congressman Fatah, for calling this moment. I know this is going to be one of a series of tributes that we're going to have. It reminds me how we all feel as we lose a dear friend, that we could have done more, we should have done more, we could have kept in touch a lot more. My Chief of Staff, Patrick Swigert, was a good friend of Reverend Bill Gray, Pastor Bill Gray, and he got me involved in a couple of campaigns for Congress. One was not too successful and very embarrassing, and the other one, of course, brought him to the House. Bill Gray, even though he was known throughout the world, had a personality that once you started talking with him, his charm, his wit would allow you to believe that you've known him all of his life. He invited me a couple of times to visit Bright Hope, and I listened to one of his sermons, and it was the first time that I felt so utterly proud of being a member of Congress, of being a Democrat, and knowing Bill Gray. Because as he took this spiritual sermon and wrapped it around, he reminded me, and should remind so many others in public service, that there was hardly anything that was in that Bible that, no matter what your religion was, that you shouldn't have some compassion for. The little children who are just the miracle of life that are born, the older people that have served and now among the most vulnerable, the sick, the disabled, those that have these emotional problems, being able to get a decent education so at least you have some of the tools that's necessary to negotiate what is sometimes called an unfair world. And of all of this biblical things that he was talking about, how he tied that into the projects, the educational project that you became a leader in, Congressman Fatah, which nobody in the country has done more for education than you have, and he spins right off with the United organization, college organization, to make certain that education was such an important factor. When it came to Medicaid and Medicare, when it came to programs providing food for those people that were starving, all of this in that sermon, it made it sound like he was saying that these are the things that we've campaigned for, these are the things that we fought for. And so I guess instead of just feeling guilty that we had not kept in touch on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, the work that he has really started in Philadelphia, in the United States Congress, in South Africa, and throughout the world, there's so much that has not been completed. And because such a great leader has succeeded him and comes out of that same family that brought people together in Philadelphia, and you try so hard to do it right here in this House of Representatives, that this work is still not completed, the mission has not been accomplished. And so those of us that knew and loved him so much, if we miss saying goodbye when he was well, we can pick up where he left off and make certain that his destination is reached by as many people as he brought over the line. Thank you so much for having this special order. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman. It is true that Bill Gray traveled a great distance in his life, born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to his date of expiration in London. But he did so much in that period of time to make this world a better place. And I want the gentlelady from California, I want to yield to her 3 minutes so that she could talk about the life and legacy and service, the extraordinary public service of our former colleague, Bill Gray. I yield to the gentlelady from California.
Thank you so very much. I'd like to first take a moment to thank you, Congressman Shaka Fattah, for putting together this moment for us to reflect on the life and legacy of Bill. I want you to know that we're so pleased that you are carrying on in his style and his tradition. Thank you very much for this evening. I rise today deeply saddened by the sudden passing of my friend and former colleague, Congressman Bill Gray. He was loved by everyone, and his legacy will continue to inspire all who knew him. I feel fortunate to have had the distinct honor of working with him over the years as both a colleague and a dear friend. I join the people of Philadelphia and Americans across the nation in mourning the loss of an effective leader and passionate advocate of the public good. Bill Gray will certainly be missed. First elected in 1978, Congressman Gray's 12 years in Congress were marked by extraordinary achievement. Not only was he the first African American to serve as chairman of the House Budget Committee, he was also the first African American to serve as Majority Whip. In addition to his outstanding leadership, Congressman Gray's skill as a politician and orator raised awareness about the talent of the Congressional Black Caucus. During his tenure, Congressman Gray also authored legislation that implemented economic sanctions against South Africa during apartheid. As our thoughts and prayers are with Nelson Mandela, we must remember and appreciate the fact it was Congressman Gray who spearheaded federal efforts to eradicate apartheid. Bill Gray was a close friend both to my husband and me long before I entered Congress. At Bill's invitation, I was honored to serve as guest speaker at Bright Hope Baptist Church in Philadelphia, where Bill served as pastor until his retirement in 2007. My husband regularly played tennis with Bill in Washington, D.C. and many cities across this nation. Bill was a strong and influential advocate for his constituents in Philadelphia and Americans around the country. And I extend my sincerest condolences to his wife, Andrea, and their 3 sons, William IV, Justin, and Andrew, during this difficult time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to share with you, when I first came to the Congress of the United States, Bill embraced me, and he took me on my first Codell. And we went to the Middle East. Here's a picture of us in Israel. It was the first Codell that I went on. I watched Bill, how he conducted himself, how he dealt with the dignitaries and the heads of states, and I've tried to model him all of these years. And so I have a lot to be thankful for. And we are saddened, but I am so pleased that I had the opportunity to learn from him, and I certainly admired him so very much. Thank you very much for organizing this opportunity for us to share our thoughts about him today. Thank you, Shaka.
I thank the gentlelady. I'm reminded, I didn't get a chance to travel with Bill Gray as a member because obviously he was here before I arrived, and by the time I got here, he was gone. But I do remember flying on Air Force One with President Clinton. We flew into the heart of Africa and walked into a meeting with Nelson Mandela, President Mandela, and in talking with the president, I explained that I represented Philadelphia. He says, Bill Gray's seat. And, you know, that will resonate for all of time, that Bill Gray has such an impact that this man was able to walk out of prison after 27 years and become president, in part because of the leadership on this House floor to do away with constructive engagement and say, no, we need it as a nation to take the right moral position. Along with Congressman Dellums and others, this was a fight. Rangel was in it. It was indispensable to helping South Africa make that transition. So I want to move from California now to another little small teeny state. I'm sorry, excuse me, Texas. Let me recognize the great gentlelady from Texas, and I extend to her 2 minutes at this time. Not objection. I saw the do.
Has to address the House and revise and extend unanimous consent. Let me thank my classmate and certainly owe him a debt of gratitude for the respect that he is allowing us to show on the floor of the House in honor of the Honorable William H. Gray III. And I too want to offer my sympathy to his wife, Andrea, to Bill Gray, who we often saw with him, and he would be really at his side, and Bill and Andrea and Justin and Andrew. I offer to them an enormous concern for the loss of this great champion. I too want to lift my voice and say that Bill Gray wore many hats on behalf of the faith community in Houston, the faith community in Texas. I want the Gray family to know that my pastors recognized and respected Bill Gray. In fact, when we would see each other, and I did not, as Shaka has said, have an opportunity to serve with him, but when we would see each other, he would ask about this pastor or that pastor, and it gave me a sense of friendship, but also a sense of connectedness to Bill by saying, oh, they like you too, or they've said hello as well, because Bill was so respected. And if I might say on this floor that Bill Gray was a child of God. And although we're going to say so many things about him, I think it is appropriate to say that he loved his church and his ministry, and my pastors across Texas are praying for his family. I would just want to cite a few things that I think are so much a part of his DNA and his legacy. To be able to be a son of a mother and father who were premier educators in the life of historically black colleges, to be able to see him carry their leadership and move it to the United Negro College Fund, which is where I first came to know him, having not served with him in his work, but I knew him earlier, to my good friend from Pennsylvania, because he and Mickey Leland were dear friends, and you can be assured that Mickey never left Washington up here. Whenever he would come home, he would share his stories with us, who looked up and thought these stories of grandeur, of leadership, of good fights to make things better. And we would hear about Bill Gray, his friend. I remember Mickey leading the Congressional Black Caucus and bringing them to Houston. And Bill Gray was there, and they were talking about what a challenge it was to leave Washington, but they were glad to come to then not really the fourth largest city in the nation, but to come down south and show what the Black Caucus represented. So I want to say that we are grateful for the courage, but also the astuteness of his success. 56 years in the United Negro College Fund, $1.6 billion, $1.5 billion, one half of that was raised under Bill Gray. He was serious about his work. And sometimes we don't understand, or we don't, and this is of course for the congressional record, because my members do, but first are to be respected, and it should be known that our colleague Bill Gray was the first African American to rise to the level of leadership of which he did. We say the words majority leader, we say the words chairman of the budget committee, we say the words chair of the Democratic caucus, but he was the first. He will forever be in the annals of history, and I think it is absolutely key that that is the case. I want to cite the bills that, as my colleague from California said, I want to call them out. H.R. 1460, the Anti-Apartheid Action Act of 1985, and the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act of 1986. Those were the guys, H.R. 4868, that came together. We mentioned Ron Dellums and the whole expanse of members at that time who stood resolved that this nation would not diminish its democratic ideals by engaging with South Africa. And I think courageously he took a stand that we are so proud of. Of course, respected in Washington, appointed by the president as an advisor, and received the Medal of Honor from the Haitian president, Aristide. He took leadership, and he took it with a great sense of dignity. Let me conclude my comments by indicating that Bill Gray always had a smile on his face. He never stopped working. There were many times he came to my office, not as the former majority leader, but for an issue that he may have had, as I know that he went into many members' office, particularly members of the Congressional Black Caucus. It was always uplifting, but Bill Gray always had a story of encouragement. He always had a smile. He had a deep laugh. He was a good man. And I want to leave this floor by saying, good men, good people die young. But what we will always remember is that Bill Gray walked in giant steps, not because of his height, but because of his service to America, his love of God, his love of people, and his love of his family. He will be forever missed, and he will be forever remembered. God bless him. God bless his family, and God bless his service. I yield back.
Thank you. All of